are back. It's the VIBE Edu podcast, and this series right now is the executive functioning series. And we've been talking first off about introducing it as far as the topic, why it's important. The second episode was more on the core executive functioning skills. And then, of course, this episode, I will throw it once again to our expert, Mitch Weathers. But we're going to be talking about high order executive functioning skills. And I made a little note, Mitch, because last time you teased it out and you said this was kind of where the 3rd to 5th grade is where these skills are starting to develop. So do you want to take it from there?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's worth just noting that the reason and I think we talked about this the last time, that the reason we kind of talk about core executive functions in the younger years and higher order in the slightly older years is that it's developmental. I mean, it's what's happening. They're emerging at different times, just developmentally as humans. And we know that they kind of keep developing into like early mid-20s. And that really is kind of the higher order executive functions. Although I think many of us know adults that you could be like, I think they're still developing for you.
Yep.
Because we all, and that's true of everybody, we all struggle in some degree with quote unquote executive functions. But so when we look at that in the older years, it's I think the most important thing with executive functions is really just equipping educators with the knowledge of what they are when they're developing, so that our expectations of students are in line with what's going on developmentally. And I think that most primary teachers would be like, yeah, of course. Like things we talked about, like our routines, they have to be, predictable, consistent, little tiny steps, all of that. But as we get into the older years, there is it's the hidden curriculum that's present in every classroom around the globe, that we have these kind of unspoken expectations, or we make assumptions about what students can do, what students can, what they know. So to step back and try to really think through, I keep referring to it as like executive functioning glasses, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And having your expectations be in line with what's going on developmentally with the students in your class. So thoughts on that?
Yeah. Give me an example for the classroom. Like, I'm thinking, I'm a teacher and I love a choice board, and I have a choice board where kids can decide, what they want this project to, let's just say, be, right? And we say, and off you go. But what we're doing really is we're expecting them to go, okay, I'm going to do this way, whatever this and this way is, because that works for me. But what we're really asking them to think about is, and also, how much time do you have in your day after school? And is there some chunks of time during the day we're going to be able to work on this? Is it going to be tricky for you to do that? Do you have other subjects or other classes or other projects or other homework or tests that you also need to put into that schedule? Do you need support from an adult to help you? Do you need outside supplies? Do you need to ask your parents for those supplies? Like, there's all of these things that we're asking a kid to do, and we're expecting them to think all of those things to execute whatever it is on the choice board. But as a teacher, we just say choice board and off you go. Am I right?
And we feel that that's a best practice, right? Well, I'm giving you choice. And in a classic UDL, Universal Design for Learning, that's like considered a best practice, right? It's not just this one way. You can demonstrate your understanding, but if I don't do the foundational work to make all that stuff you just said, but when we think of executive functioning, we have to make sure that what I'm asking, like if I have these 3 options on the choice board, what skills and habits and knowledge do I have to go do that, quote unquote, independently? And what you were just talking about, the higher order, by the way, reasoning, planning, and problem solving are kind of the 3 categories in higher order, where core executive functions, working memory, inhibition, cognitive flexibility. And although we're chunking kind of like in line with my two books, the K3 and then 312, that you can see just by what Kim said, there's interaction and they mix up. We're just talking about developmentally when they're starting to emerge. Okay. But you just talked about that, like time management. Well, and the assumption in ninth grade, for example, in my classes, well, you will be able to do X, Y, and Z, but really good if we keep it in the lens of cognitive load and working memory. Like we want to reduce extraneous cognitive load to free up working memory bandwidth so that I have a better chance of demonstrating success on all those little things that you said, Kim. And if a teacher can step back with those executive functioning glasses and make all of that explicit, then students are more likely to be successful. And that's where like the foundational knowledge comes in, or background knowledge. If I'm wanting you to do this thing, is there knowledge that I'm assuming you have that you need that's yours? It's not going to take up any working memory. You got it to do X, Y, and Z, right? Like math is the classic example of we're working on this thing and I'm teaching that concept. And it's only going to go well if you have all of this background knowledge, things we've learned in the past. But if I'm assuming you have that, then we run in, it gets problematic. And, so thinking about not making assumptions, teasing out the hidden curriculum. That's everything you just said would be the classic hidden curriculum definition. Kind of like this thing, and it's really cool. And I have this choice board. And then you're like, oh, why did that fall apart? Why didn't it work? Why did 50% of the kids turned in? And you start to lift up the hood on that, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just, it's to be honest, I don't think it's addressed in our teacher prep programs. No, the choice board might be, maybe UDL, maybe, but UDL is like, I mean, there's so much
its own world
up to it. Yeah. So anyway,
but isn't it, Mitch? It sounds like it's any multi-step process, right? Like you talked about multi-step math. It could be a research project. It could be something where it's long form writing. I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head of all the things where it was deemed like, this kid doesn't understand the material, but it wasn't. It was more of a planning issue, right? Because to Kim's point, they're getting stuck because they can't plan ahead, or they can't manage their own time, or sometimes even like monitor or manage their own thinking. They might be pretty chaotic. And TJ made the point last episode about just like even the environment, right? Like the noise level and some of the chaos that occurs there, where they can't even get a handle on their own thoughts. TJ, you've talked about this too, and maybe you want to expand on that. It's just like your own experience as a student, being able to manage just the surroundings to get your organization in your own mind.
Yeah, for sure. I was saying pre-show that I can't really do solid thinking unless it's relatively quiet or silent, for that matter. And any print, and I've brought this up before on the show, any print in front of me is just going to get read over and over and over again. Total distraction. But I also am worried about like the line. Like how can we draw the line, Mitch? So for example, all of the things that Kim just described, somebody listening is going to say, yeah, but if you do that, all of that for students, they'll never be able to do it on their own. Or somebody will say that's babying kids. I don't necessarily prescribe to that, but I wonder where the line is.
Mm-hmm. Well, my opinion on that, and that comes up quite a bit in my work. In fact, I had 2 meetings last week because I've taken to, and a teacher or leader, more oftentimes it's a school or district leader that sees the need for the work or book study or organized mind, something around executive functioning, but they're running into problems with the like convincing or getting buy-in, because not that the staff doesn't see the executive dysfunction or the need for this work. The notion is that, well, they're not going to have those supports in middle school, so why should we do it in elementary? Or They're not going to have that when they get to high school. So why should we do that now? Or the classic, they're never going to have that in college. Why should we? Right. Which is why my team and I work with colleges, because it's like, I had to have this conversation with a charter school network doing great work, by the way, incredible charter network. But there's this growing voice among the staff saying like, well, they're not going to have this stuff. Right. And I'm like, but if that's the case, and you're recognizing, you're not arguing the fact that students need support as these executive functions are developing. You're just saying they're not going to have it in the future. So if not you, then who? Right? That age-old saying, like at some point, or you just fumble through life, and some people pick some stuff up, some don't. Like, and based on your lived experience and a whole bunch of other factors, the data is very clear about who is developing these and who's not. But I just have my saying now is like, okay, and it seems to work. I'd love to get your guys' opinion. I don't know if I shared it with you, but I have another one that has profanity in it. So I'm going to not use that response. And the response I told to this charter network, I was trying to be so kind about it. But I just said, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I don't understand it, because let's just pretend that tomorrow we just knew we couldn't drink any water. Something happened. No bottled water, nothing. You are going to be thirsty, and by the end of the 24 hours, you're going to be pretty dehydrated. We can't go too many days without water, right? But if you knew that was coming, following your logic, would you then stop drinking water today to get ready for what the experience will be like tomorrow? Of course not. You would drink water right up till midnight. You would hydrate the hell out of your body. And then you would hopefully coast through the day a little bit better. And it's the same thing here. Like if you know they're not going to have any supports in college, and it has nothing to do with their ability to be successful, and you can start to influence that here and now, why wouldn't you? I just don't understand the logic. So to answer your question, sorry, and then I'll be quiet. That line to me is error on the side of helping the student, not this is what's coming up.
Yeah.
That I get that part. Like, I think most of the listeners will even buy that, right? Even though you've said that it's a common struggle for educators you work with. The part that the line I'm talking about though, is like in the classroom. So I got my choice board.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do I do with and for kids with the choice board to ensure that all those pieces that Kim described are going to be successful? Because 32 high schoolers, they don't all need that. And there could be a line where there's just you've dumbed it down too much. Kids don't need that. And maybe it's even condescending if you go too far.
I love, Mitch, you say this often, and I say it now too, is you want to make the implicit explicit, right? So if like we have our choice board, let's just say we're going to paint a picture for everybody listening. There's a choice board and there's 3 different options. I'm going to show, and it doesn't matter what grade these kids are. They could be in high school, they could be in college. I'm going to show them what it looks like to be complete. This choice over here, to be complete, to have all the parts, it looks like this. This choice, it looks like this. And this choice, it looks like this. That in itself is awesome. Then if you also give them the next step, which is, and these are the steps that you need to take in order to get it to look like that. And then kids go, oh, maybe that's a step I don't know how to do, right? Mitch, like what you were talking about. Is it automatic for you? Do you not know how to do that? Then that's probably not a choice that you want to choose. If this one over here, you can do all of those steps and not have to really go back, relearn, rethink, go in, whatever it is to be able to do that, right? And the conversation from the teacher is exactly that. Plus maybe, hey, also think about how much time it's going to take you to do this, right? And how much time you want to allow yourself to be doing this work. So I think that as a conversation, you can have that conversation when the kid is 5 and when the kid is 15. I don't think that conversation could be, that different. And that's some of the stuff that we do with our teachers, and we break it down even more for them. But that changes the game, that stuff. When you make the implicit explicit and also show them the steps with a little bit of a front loaded conversation about the time and everything, that's like a game changer.
And
So
for the big kids though, TJ, you bring up a good point. Like I hear what you're saying now, like, okay, well, at what point do I want you to be able to do this independently? And I think, what Kim's describing is just, let's just be honest, it's good teaching.
Yeah.
Like it's just good teaching, right? And being hyper explicit about what this is going to take. And if there's an expectation for the high schoolers, TJ, you're talking about, let's say, that, you know how to manage your time. Like, you know how to keep a calendar.
Yeah.
You know how to get and stay organized. Well, if I'm assuming you have that skill set, those higher order, and this is worth mentioning as well. You hear executive functions. We're talking about, and you hear about executive functioning skills. And it's important to, the way I define that is that executive functions are these cognitive processes, but there's resulting behaviors, which are these skills. Like, do I know how to keep a calendar, manage my time? Do I know how to get and stay organized? Can I demonstrate goal-oriented behavior? All these things we want to spot in the classroom. I think the question then is, well, if I'm expecting that you have this higher order executive functioning skill called time and task management, let's say, and then my belief on that is then I need to be one of the people who's teaching you that, modeling it for you, and giving you practice as a byproduct of routine. I'm not teaching it in like, today we're going to learn about time management and why it's important and how you do it. It's like, no. Second step of the routine and organized binder in my first book is you look at your calendar and you write things down like we all do, what we were doing pre-show. All right. Okay.
Yep.
And now, okay, so now we're talking about the choice board. That's due on Friday. It's Monday. How do you manage your time between now and then based on these steps? This is what it's going to take. And I'm asking you somewhat to do this independently. So when are you going to do that? And you need to write that on your calendar so you know it's coming. Like, just basics, but they're not so basic.
Right.
And it steps back and looks at, honestly, the cognitive load we put on students and our assumptions. And it's like, I don't know how to do that. And I can't, this is truth with working with colleges. The thing that they're thrilled about, especially high schoolers getting practice with, is time and task management, AKA getting my syllabus, unpacking it for the entire semester on my calendar, knowing when the due dates are, knowing when I need to read this chapter to show up to class on week 15, all that stuff. And then the skill, then it becomes just look at your calendar every day. Mm-hmm. If you map it all out, then all you have to do is just look at your calendar every day. We do that, all of us, right? So it's just making those things hyper explicit, but in a way, it has to be teacher friendly. It has to be implementable, because if it interferes with what I'm supposed to be doing, teaching 5th grade, I'm just probably not going to get around to it. And that's where the routines come in place, and thinking about the environment, which we were talking about last time with the acoustics and the visuals and all of that. It has to have a small time footprint at the same time.
I would also
go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was just thinking, like, each student too, to your point, TJ, is on a different timeline. I mean, we talk about this with the curriculum all the time, right? And you get a pushback on like reassessment and all that, but the main point is, like, student A might get it right away versus student B needs 2 weeks to master the content. So who's to say that we have to move on to the next part of the unit and not allow that student to retest? Well, it's the same difference. I mean, in my own journey, in my own life, looking back and thinking about it, Mitch, these skills didn't get possessed until I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old.
At best, yeah.
At best, right?
Yeah.
And I was the kid that was sitting there doing nothing after they told me about 20 different steps that were needed about this project. You have multiple weeks to get it done. And I'd wait and I'd wait and I'd wait. And it looked like I was lazy. I didn't care about it until the
looks
last
like
second.
Procrastination, but it's not.
Procrastination. Right. And I would just get it done with like the last day and do a shitty job on it and get a bad grade and move on to the next thing.
And feel really good about myself as a student.
Right. No, I've already said it on this. I hated school. But it was me just like sitting there, not even knowing where to go with any of these, right? Because I didn't have what Kim was talking about as far as these are the steps. Like, let's get started here. Here's the transitions. This is the time management. This is going to take you X amount of minutes and move on. And when you go home, you need to do X, Y, and Z so you can stay up to that. All those components. Nobody was sitting there and sitting there mapping that out for me. And so it was just like, once again, Mitch, to your point, it's an assumption that my students have these skills. And let's face it, back then it was like, and if you don't have these skills, well, good luck, kid.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess you're not meant to go to college.
Ambiguity in learning spaces is just a death wish.
Right.
It just doesn't. Some kids can navigate through it, and I think the question we ultimately have to ask in this dialogue is, what are you assessing? What's the point of the project or the assignment or the activity? Because if I want to know, and we tell the story in book 2, Sarah and I, we come back to it over and over and over. It runs through the whole book, as you guys know, called Betty and the Bats. And just trying to look at environment, routines, and instruction through the lens of this, reducing cognitive load. But the whole point is this: Betty is in the class of first or second graders, I forget, are writing 2 sentences about what they've learned about bats. So you have to step back, and there, or the choice board that Kim's talking about. What's the point? As the teacher, am I assessing your ability to write 2 sentences? It might be. There's nothing wrong with that if it's age and appropriate what we're doing. Or am I assessing, am I interested on your recall of information from the unit on bats? Or am I looking at your spelling? Is it about the spelling? Because I want to see, can you spell the words we've learned in the bats? Or am I looking at like punctuation and grammar? There's so many things that you could be assessing. And if you don't get clear, that's why clarity is king when it comes to executive functions. Like, what is it that I'm assessing? And if that thing I can get really crystal clear on, then I can offload some of that working memory, that cognitive load bandwidth, like an external hard drive. Well, if I'm not assessing spelling, here's all the words from our unit. This is how you spell bats. This is how you spell guano. This is how you spell. You don't have to worry about that if you don't. Just look right there. Or whatever it might be, whatever you're trying to assess. So this the same thing with this choice board thing. What's the point? Because if the point, like, okay, it's towards the end of the year and I'm going to let you be pretty independent. I'm going to tell you about that, but you're going to manage this. Okay. Is that like really what I'm assessing? Or, so I think we have to get clear about what we're assessing from the activity or the assignment or the lesson, whatever it is. And then backing up, as Kim said so well at the beginning, what does it take to be able to do that? Because as adults, most of us can kind of just do all those things and not think too much about it. And young people, these executive functions are still emerging. So
I was working with a couple teachers, fourth grade teachers, and they were talking about how they were assessing their students with the skill of cause and effect. So do I understand this is the cause, this is the effect, right? And the curriculum, it was like having to use that skill with, like, I think it was social studies. They were talking about the 3 branches of government, and these kids, they're a rough group. Okay. Rough. It is a rough group of children. Okay. You've got kids spouting off all the time. You've got loads of trauma in there. You've got majority are on IEPs. I mean, it's a group, right? And so the teachers looked at me and they were like, but then I decided, like, if I'm really assessing cause and effect, like, can they just draw like a comic strip of something that happened to them, like a cause and effect? And I was like, well, what did you end up doing? And they're like, well, we did that. And they did it and they loved it. And I was like, of course they did. Because what are you really assessing? Are you assessing cause and effect with the government? Is that really what it is? Or do they understand cause and effect? That concept right there. Is that what it is? And they're like, it's just that. I just want them to be able to get that. And one of the students, in her comic, she did something about bison and how it was like these 2 kids that were like going to touch the bison. And the bison was like, don't do it. And then they were like, oh, thinking in their brain, like, oh, and they were going to be running right afterwards if the bison came towards them. So it was like, if I touch the bison's come get me. And another kid, drew something about what had just happened, which was they slipped on a clipboard. You know, clipboards, think of clipboards on like the carpet, slippery. So a kid had stepped on the clipboard, had slipped and fallen, right? Got super embarrassed. That was cause and effect. You leave the clipboard on the ground, somebody's going to trip on it and fall, right? So I think getting clear about what it is you're assessing, yes, and give them what they need in order to be successful. You want your kids to feel successful. You want them to not feel like how Josh felt. It was like, what? I don't even know what I'm doing here. Like, what? It's not even worth it to me. You want to give them what they need. Then I was also thinking about, I keep on going back to that cognitive load and automaticity. And just the other day, you guys, I was doing a massive rehaul of my website on teachinginsideout.com. And I went to this page. It was the podcast page. And by the way, I have 2 podcasts, Unleashing the Bison and VIBE Edu. And so for me, I was like, let me get very clear on what this page needs to look like. And so I used Claude. I punched in all the things I needed. And guess what? It gave me a visual of what it was going to look like when it was complete. Now, the steps are kind of in there, right? Claude can like walk you through some of the steps and you kind of can start from the top and go down. But I've done a website before. In fact, I've done a website like multiple times and redone it. And so I know the steps in my brain. I also know the amount of time that I need to give myself to do each of those steps. And I'm telling you, when I got to the one part where it said, link YouTube for VIBE Edu videos, link it on the website, I was like, I never done that before. And I was thinking in my brain, shoot, there's so many other things that I need to do on YouTube to get that going. I've never used YouTube before. I don't know how to put the graphics on there. There's all these things. And then I was like, let me just go check out YouTube. Let me just press this link right here. And guess what? My good friend Josh Stamper had already done all of the work for me so that that part could become automatic for me. And again, the amount of relief that I felt, right? This is you managing your emotions too. I could have flown off the handle. I could have like, gotten upset or anxious or worried or frustrated or whatever. But I was able to go, oh my God, that's there. It's automatic. It was already, I could just link and it was done. And then I could keep on going down the list. That's what we're talking about here. That's real life. That's adults need it also, right? So it's not just a kid thing. It's not just a choice board. It's not just a classroom thing. It's stuff in life. And not everybody's making a website, and I get that. But that's just a good example, I think, of like how you need all of those pieces together.
And keep in mind, that's really well said, by the way. We're adults.
Yeah.
And we don't manage our emotions and, in those situations at times. So we have to, again, like, that's what I was saying, like developmentally age appropriate expectations on students, but to keep in mind that, especially in our youngers with the core executive functions, but I argue all the way through that, when we talk about creating environments that lead to better executive functioning, it's thinking about working memory, cognitive load, and then what can I do? Because I can't change everything, right? There's a lot of things that students are carrying with them from their own lives, their own thing. Like, what I'm just trying to do is put those executive functioning glasses on and say, what can I do? Like inhibition. So we talked about the volume in the classroom, or the visual scanning, the physical furniture, the physical space. Those are all things that we can get really intentional about specifically for XYZ. It doesn't have to be all day long. Classroom doesn't have to be silent all day long, but maybe at times it's really important that it is. And there's a reason for that. And that's, all of the way we can create more automaticity, reduce interference, which has to do with multi-step directions and a choice board project. We have to think about. I was having a conversation with Katie Novak, UDL queen, right? Like, synonymous with UDL, and she was working with a district, and they were talking about choice boards, and the choice boards were around note taking. and you could choose. So probably secondary, middle school, or high school. And they had, again, considered it UDL best practice. You could do like the pictorial notes. You could do like more of a Cornell note style, or you could even take your notes digitally. And they brought it to her and were, showing her, and she said, "That's great, but it's not going to work right now." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" It's like, "Well, have you taught everybody how to take notes in all 3 ways?" Like, "No, we're just going to give them the option. We're going to give them the choices."
Right.
And she said, "It's not going to work. That's not UDL. What it means is this. You are going to start, you guys all pick whichever one you want. Let's say the picture one. And for 6 weeks, you're going to model and teach that embedded in your content. And students are going to learn to take notes that way. And then the next 6 weeks, you're going to do Cornell notes. No choice. Everybody's doing Cornell notes, unless, of course, specific adjustments need to be made for a kiddo. Third, then we're going to learn to take notes digitally. We're going to type our notes. And at the end of those 18 weeks, then you can put your choice board up and confidently know that students have what it takes. They have the executive functions to pick which choice they want to do and be successful with it. But just to expect, and that's what we do, right? It's like, oh, this is a best practice. This is a really good thing, which is why the UDL guidelines of 3.0, the major overhaul, they pulled executive functions out. And if you look at the grid, if you can all picture this, there's 9 boxes. Just look it up. Go to CAST, KAST, and the UDL 3.0 guidelines. I love how they did it. The bottom layer, there's 3 rows, 3 columns. It's a grid. The bottom one is the whole thing is executive function. And I don't know if it was deliberate, but it's like, yeah, this lays the foundation for universal design for learning. So your choice board, you say, like the things that set students up for success most often are that background knowledge, right? That foundation, can I just automatic, and executive functions.
Yeah. So
often that's what's holding students back, and it has nothing to do with their ability or what they've learned. So
can I give another example of that? 3rd grade teacher and I were working, and she was getting frustrated because her 3rd grade mathematicians, so we're talking about math here, right? It was like she was seeing crazy behaviors, and they were bebopping all around or talking to friends or not doing the math worksheet or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, let's really figure out what we can do to support them so that they can do this math. And what it ended up being was she had spent those weeks teaching the different types of ways to do the math. It was like multiplying, right? And I was like, well, where's your visual on like those 4 different ways to do the math? And did you color code them? So like one is red and one is green and one is blue and one is whatever, purple. And then you can say, hey, guys, these are your 4 different ways that you guys know how to multiply. So now off you go, right? You're giving them what they need to be successful. And guess what? She goes, it was magic. And I was like, it wasn't the behaviors. It was, you need to give them what they need in order to be successful. And this is what you've already taught them. And now there's choice. Now they can do it on their own. They can talk to a friend about it. Are you going to solve it like this way in the purple? Or are you going to solve it like the way in the red? Like that type of stuff, like you said, it's just good teaching. It should just become what you do. It's nothing extra. Oh, you're on mute. You look cute, but you're on mute.
As long as I look cute, that's all that really matters. No, I was just going to say, like, just a kind of an exclamation point. I think Josh and TJ can appreciate this, that the older we get, like as we move through the grades, for whatever reason, we do less of that, and we get so much more content focused. And that's where the hidden curriculum can really start to pile up on certain kiddos. And so to come back to that, even back to TJ, like your line, okay, what's this? What's enough? What's too much? Of course, there is no one answer, but it's a good question to grapple with when I'm asking you to do something, even if you're 18 years old and a senior in high school. Like, what assumptions am I making? Let me just check that they're all accurate. It might take a few minutes to think through those. It's good teaching. And I mean, we can all probably think of it, professors we had in college that you just like did so well in their class because they actually taught a little bit and didn't just talk about the stuff they know, which a lot of my professors did. And that I think my, saving grace was I ended up as a geology major. Well, you got to like do stuff. We were going outside and looking at rocks and going in gold mines and, all the stuff. You couldn't just sit there and take notes, for a semester and it had some action involved, but
Hey, Mitch.
I digress. Yeah.
Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the 3.0 UDL guidelines by CAST. And it came out in 2024. And if you look at that bottom rung or row, it says executive function, that little gray tab. And so that's the way when you look at engagement, representation, action, expression, you can see in the brain where those executive functions are happening. It's really interesting work. And that bottom kind of supporting row, this is all based on research, user feedback from the 2.0. And guess what? This is one of my feathers in my cap. Guess whose first book was cited in kind of the overhaul of this grid? The
TJ Berry.
I didn't even know it was because my first book came out in 2024 and I had a teacher from somewhere, I forget, like literally emailed and they're like, holy shit, have you seen this? And I was like, no, what? And she sent me like the references for this section in the overhaul. And she's like, you're cited as the, one of the resources for this. But the important thing here though, is just recognizing the importance of executive functions when it comes to UDL. And so many schools and districts and teachers are working on UDL. If you're not also, and maybe even as a precursor, working on executive functions, it's going to be harder to implement full UDL. In fact, I just spoke at a district and they asked me to come in and the leadership was like, we're working on UDL, but please don't say UDL. We're not there yet. We're just not there yet. And they're just not thoughtful, like strategic. And so we were having this kind of conversation throughout the day, but I never once said executive functions are the foundation for UDL, and they are. So
I love it. Okay, we're wrapping up.
Yes, we are.
I think we should.
DJ's got to go kick a soccer ball around.
It was him that was kicking the ball.
He might
be watching a few folks doing that. All right, so I'll make sure in the show notes for the graphic, I want to make sure that we shout out Cass for that and make sure that we'll have the link in there so that you have the graphic. And you can download the PDF. They provide that for you online. So
and it's all clickable too. Josh, so everybody knows that's an interactive grid. It's not static, but you can just download the static PDF. I mean, it's all open access, free stuff. So
perfect. Awesome. So I'll make sure I put that because we want to give them a shout out. And then Kim, I always ask you the same question. It seems like in the last however many episodes about this beautiful event that's being constructed right now with VIBE Edu. So do you have anything that you want to tease out at the end of this episode?
A couple things. We have the VIBE Edu Inclusion Impact Fellowship for teachers in California. So when teachers or educators are listening to this right now, we would have closed the application, but we will be starting the interviews for our 6 fully funded spots. So they get a free ticket and perhaps even a flight if they're in Northern California down to SoCal to be at VIBE Edu on July 31st and August 1st. And then I also was thinking too, you know what else I got you guys was the link to grab the hotel rooms. So we can start linking that too for people. I know. Avenue of the Arts in Costa Mesa. We have a great discount rate for everybody who wants to come. So we're ready to like pop that out.
Well, that's also the setting for day 2, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So if you're doing the VIP ticket and you want to join us for that second day, then it would make a lot of sense for you to be in that hotel and to take advantage of that discount. So we'll make sure that's in the show notes also for everyone, as it's amazing that it's almost April and we are getting closer and closer to the summer and to this wonderful event. So super excited about that. It's awesome that we'll have that link for you. And then Mitch, I know that we consistently ask for folks to ask questions in the comment section, because you can do that not only on YouTube, but also Spotify allows that. So I just happened to look at Spotify, and someone asked a very important question about, hey, I'm a third grade teacher and there's an overlap in the title of your first book and the second book. They're wondering where they should start. Obviously, I'm going to say get both copies, but if they were to start with one book, where would you refer them?
I'd start with the second book, the blue one.
Yeah, the blue one.
Probably. I think
I'm still waiting for my copy.
This. I don't know.
I purchased mine on a Cornell.
Corwin.
God damn.
Yeah, I don't know. I
need to
have a
drink.
meeting
What
this
time is it?
afternoon to fight. I have to. I'm having a meeting with Corwin this afternoon to ask about that. But yeah, I would say start to that teacher. Start with the first. Move on to the second. Not trying to sell you two books. I think they're bundled on Amazon right now too. So find the cheapest route. Organized Binder has them. Corwin has them. Amazon has them. Go where you can get them cheapest. But yeah, I'd get both, but start with the first one for sure.
Well, Corwin, you were saying that they are pushing them out right now, right? Whereas in Amazon, it seemed like there was a delay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited to get my copy first, and Kim's going to have to wait. But all that being said, is I want you guys to throw in the comment section some questions, because our next episode will be closing down the series for executive functioning. And then, of course, we do our mailbag. So if you have any questions in regards to this series or anything prior to, make sure that you're throwing that in, or you can just send them straight to Kim, which a lot of you tend to do also. And we look forward to answering those questions. Of course, if you need any support, our links are in the show notes, and we'd love to help any way possible. And we will see you once again next week.